الحمد لله وكفى والصلاة والسلام على من اتبع وآله وصحبه ومن والاه. وبعد, to proceed, resuming and reading from this booklet, بتلخيص الحموية, for that legendary Imam, that great scholar of his era, Muhammad bin Salih al-Uthaymeen rahimahullah, writing concerning an important topic that relates to the essential of our belief, the names and attributes of Allah. Consider this mandatory, that you learn about your belief. Consider this as an essential duty that you have, that you learn about Allah, especially concerning His beautiful names and attributes. We live in a day and age, little time is given to learn about our Aqeedah, our creed, and much time is given in learning other sciences. While al-aham fil-aham, what has a priority should have the most in your schedule. So let us understand, O fellow brothers, that this topic of Aqeedah, it is guidance from Allah. It is guidance from Allah and success from Him alone, that a person strives, supplicating to his Lord, to come and to know this path and being steadfast upon it. But verily, there are certain causes and factors that play a role in getting between you and being upon this Aqeedah that we learn. There are people perhaps more intelligent than you, more in a greater upbringing of Islam than you, and perhaps had all the tools of reaching to the truth of their surroundings more than you, yet they weren't guided. It is upon us to understand that these factors could get between you and the truth. And these factors, from the greatest of them, is the affair, ya ikhwah, of pride and self-amazement. People may ask, why do certain people be diverted and turned away from this truth, despite how clear it is? It's crystal clear. Kitabun wa sunnah, upon the methodology of the Sahaba. Well, how clear could it get? But there are causes that a person can be turned away from it. And we read some of these verses that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala repeats, where Allah mentions some of these causes. We're going to mention some of them. And these are from the words of our scholars, from the means or the reasons why a person become deviated from the path of the Salafus Salih. And they mention from the first of them, al-kibr, pride and self-amazement. And they mention the statement of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as a proof, سَأَصْرِفُ عَنْ آيَاتِيَ الَّذِينَ يَتَكَبَّرُونَ فِي الْأَرْضِ بِغَيْرِ الْحَقِّ. That Allah mentions and proclaims and announces that He is going to divert and make them turn away from His verses, His signs, الَّذِينَ يَتَكَبَّرُونَ فِي الْأَرْضِ, those who are prideful in the lands. بِغَيْرِ الْحَقِّ, meaning that they have no right to do so. For verily, this quality and attribute belongs to Allah alone. And then Allah mentions, وَإِن يَرَوْا كُلَّ آيَةٍ لَا يُؤْمِنُوا بِهَا. And if they were to see every sign, every evidence, every proof, as Shaykh Al-Bani rahimahullah says, if you were to come to them with 1,000 proofs, لَا يُؤْمِنُوا بِهَا, they won't believe it. They won't submit to it. وَإِن يَرَوْا سَبِيلَ الرُّشْدِ لَا يَتَّخِذُوهُ سَبِيلًا. And if they see the path of guidance, they won't take it as a path. وَإِن يَرَوْا سَبِيلَ الْغَيِّ يَتَّخِذُوهُ سَبِيلًا. However, if they see the path that is astray and of deviance, They take that as their path. What was the cause? What was the factor? It was mainly arrogance and self-pride. It is a quality that could get between you and the truth. Do not allow yourself to have even the mustard seed of pride in your heart. That small size of pride could be the reason where you're turned away from the truth despite how clear it is. So this is from the number one factors why a person deviates from this correct methodology, the way of the Salafus Salih. Number one, the affair of pride. And if you look at some of these people that have deviated and we read about them, you find that they fall into this. Certain things that they were so amazed about how intellectual they were and their upbringing. And when the proofs and evidence were brought to them, they weren't humble to it. And Ibn Uyaynah, Al-Imam al-Tabari rahimahullah, he quotes with an authentic chain to Ibn Uyaynah, Sufyan ibn Uyaynah, regarding the exegesis of this ayah. He says the meaning of this verse, that Allah will make them divert away from the signs. He says that Allah will ينزع عنهم فهم القرآن. Allah will take away from them and deprive from them the understanding of the Quran. Verses are read to them and little do they understand. Ahadith are recited to them and little do they understand. So this is something very important and crucial indeed. And also from the factors that they mention that a person may deviate from this path despite how clear it is none other than the topic of being lenient who you take your knowledge from. Being lenient and taking it lightly whom you take your deen from. For verily this knowledge is our deen. So look whom to you take your deen from. And they say the example that many of the scholars give is none other than Ibn Aqeel al-Hanbali. Everybody knows Ibn Aqeel al-Hanbali? It rings a bell. He is the author that wrote the biggest book in the dunya. There hasn't occurred in the history of Islam a book that was greater, more massive than his book. He wrote the biggest book in Islam. I don't think there would come a book that hasn't occurred from before nor after in his time. Ibn Aqeel al-Hanbali, he was given the title as the Shaykh of the scholars of the Madhab al-Hanbali in his era. He was unique, rare of his knowledge. This person, the book that he wrote, titled Al-Funun, the arts, it was approximately, as some scholars said, 800 volumes. 800 mujalladat. Some said less, some said around that. And when you read about this person, despite how intelligent he was, but he was trialed with deviation concerning Aqeedah. And this was in his young youthfulness of his shabab. He presented himself to take in knowledge from some of the teachers of the Mu'tazilites, those who have deviation concerning the names and attributes of Allah. So he took knowledge from not only one, but a couple. Sometimes a person may take the matter lightly, listening to this person or listening to that person. And as a result, he was trialed greatly. He was trialed greatly regarding the names and attributes of Allah. And as Ibn Hajar rahimahullah mentioned in his biography of Ibn Aqil, or speaking about him in the book Lisan al-Mizan, he said, after praising him, that he was a rare, prominent scholar of his time in knowledge, in intelligence, and being so diverse in various sub-sciences of the knowledge. And then he says, إِلَّا أَنَّهُ خَالَفَ السَّلَفِ. After mentioning that he wrote a book over 400 volumes, he said, إِلَّا أَنَّهُ خَالَفَ السَّلَفِ. He opposed the Salaf al-Salih. A man with this level of knowledge wrote this amount of volumes. And then he said, وَوَافَقَ الْمُعْتَزِلَ فِي عِدَّةِ بِدْعَ. He coincided or agreed with the Mu'tazilites in a number of innovations. Then he said, نَسْأَلَ اللَّهَ الْعَفْوَ وَالسَّلَامَ. We ask Allah for pardoning and safety. And then he says, فَإِنَّ كَثْرَةَ التَّبَحُّرِ فِي الْكَلَامِ رُبَّمَا أَضَرَّ بِصَاحِبِهِ وَمِنْ حُسْنِ الْإِسْلَامِ الْمَرْءِ تَرْكُهُ مَا لَا يَعْنِيهِ. He said, perhaps being so overwhelmed and engaged into various of theologies of rhetoric, it could lead a person to being harmed in his religion. And then he said, from the excellence of one Islam is to leave off what does not concern him. So the story is that he wanted to expand, and as he's expanding, he would expose himself to various of teachers, and this was the reason of his downfall. Yes, some have said that he recanted from this later on, but much he was trialed with just for taking knowledge from people of deviation. So if you want to become diverse, your excuse should not be, I'm going to be loose in whom I take my knowledge from. That is not the affair. Do not say that I know better, I will not be affected. The scholar, there was a rare like of his time. He wrote the biggest dunya, wrote the biggest book in the dunya, ikhwan, and he was affected. Also from the factors that they said a person could deviate from this aqeedah and this methodology is the topic of al-baghi, they say, transgression. And when you read the ayat, you find a lot of that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, كَانَ النَّاسُ أُمَّةً وَاحِدًا, that the people were one nation. فَبَعَثَ اللَّهُ النَّبِيِّينَ مُبَشِّرِينَ وَمُنذِرِينَ وأنزل معهم الكتاب بالحق ليحكم بين الناس فيما اختلفوا فيه وما اختلف فيه إلا الذين أوتوه من بعد ما جاءتهم البينات بغيا بينهم. So Allah mentions that Allah dispatched as a result of the people were one nation, Nabiyyin, Mubashirin, or Munzirin, carrying glad tidings and warnings, and sent unto them the book with truth to judge between the people of what they differed in. Meaning that they were once united, and what divided them, Allah says, when the proofs and evidence came to them, that they were in a state of transgression amongst themselves. And also, Allah says, إِنَّ الدِّينَ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ الْإِسْلَامِ وَمَا اخْتَلَفَ الَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْكِتَابَ إِلَّا مِنْ بَعْدِ مَا جَاءَهُمُ الْعِلْمُ بَغْيًا بَيْنَهُمْ. That Allah mentions that verily the religion in the sight of Allah is Islam. And the people who were of the people of Scripture did not differ and become various of sects and deviated from the original thing that they were sent to them, except when knowledge came to them, they became transgressive. بَغْيًا بَيْنَهُمْ. Also the statement of Allah, وَمَا تَفَرَّقُوا إِلَّا مِنْ بَعْدِ مَا جَاءَهُمُ الْعِلْمُ بَغْيًا بَيْنَهُمْ. So إِلَّا مِنْ بَعْدِ مَا جَاءَهُمُ الْعِلْمُ بَغْيًا بَيْنَهُمْ. That they did not separate and divide amongst themselves except after knowledge came to them. and it was a reason of transgression. Al-Baghi, Ya ayyuhan nas, innama baghiyukum ala anfusikum. O mankind, transgression will come back onto you. It will come back to harm you. It will come to haunt you later on. And al-Baghi, it is mujawazatul had, to go beyond the limit, whether in statements, whether it be in actions, to be transgressive even to others. You find people, they don't suffice themselves with the truth, they want to go beyond it. This is one of the reasons why people deviate. For example, the Salaf Salih, they said, قِفْ حَيْثُ وَقَفَ الْقَوْمِ, stop where the people stop. فَقَدْ كُفِيتُمْ, you've been sufficed. And some people want to go beyond that. They want to be creative. They want to explore. They want to so-called go into various of sciences that could be their downfall and fall into one of the traps of shaitan. So these three are from the greatest reasons of deviation from the madhhab of Salaf al-Salih. And you find when you read these biographies of these individuals, one of these factors played a role, perhaps. So always be cautious. Be someone that avoids from baghi in all of its circumstances, in all of its types. You find even now the different groups of people that are divided, there's baghi between them, transgression. Transgression where they even go beyond what is permitted of certain affairs. They're transgressive to one another, and as a result perhaps leads them to become deviated. In all cases, a person should perhaps get up in the night making the dua of the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet would perhaps get up in the night asking Allah, Allahumma ihdini fima ikhtulifa fihi min al-haqqi bi'idhnik, innaka latahdi ila sirat al-mustaqim. Oh Allah, guide me to the straight path, the sirat al-mustaqim, in what people have differed concerning. So when people are differing, you are asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to keep you rightly guided throughout it. So when we read about these deviations, ya akhwa, and the names and attributes of Allah, do not assume that this is due to their lack of intelligence or due to them being in a particular region that the tools of knowledge wasn't around them. This could be you if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not guide you. وَلَوْ شَاءَ رَبُّكَ كُنْتَ أَيْضًا مِثْلَهُمْ فَالْقُلُوبُ بَيْنَ أَصْحَابِ الرَّحْمَنِ. Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah mentions in his Nuniyah, if Allah willed, you could have been like them. Verily the hearts are between the fingers of Rahman. So we're going to continue from where we left off, and no further delay, we ask the brother to continue reading. Hold on.
This full statement contains within it truth and falsehood. As for the truth, it is his statement, the way of the Salaf is safer, and the falsehood is his saying, yet the way of the Khalaf is more knowledgeable and wiser. This is false for many reasons.
So now, Shaykh Islam ibn Taymiyyah, he addresses their misconceptions one by one. And this is the way of the scholars, that they may address the doubts generally and specifically, especially if it's needed to take one doubt, dissect them one for the other, scrutinize and clarify the criticism that each point contains. And sometimes this can be more convincing and more satisfying for those who you wish to convince, to clarify it and point form. And this is originally taken from Shaykh Islam Taymiyyah's words, even though it's Shaykh Muhammad Salih al-Uthaymeen's. So he says, الوجه الأول أنه يناقض قوله إن طريقة السلف أسلم فإن كون طريقة السلف أسلم من لوازم كونها أعلم وأحكم إذ لا سلامة إلا بالعلم والحكمة العلم بأسباب السلامة والحكمة في سلوك تلك الأسباب وبهذا يتبين أن طريقة السلف أسلم وأعلم وأحكم وهو لازم لهذا الغبي لزوما لا محيد عنه.
Firstly, it contradicts his first statement. The way of the Salaf is safer. For if the way of the Salaf is in fact safer, then it must be more knowledgeable and wiser because there is no safety except with knowledge and wisdom. Knowledge of the means leading to this safety and the wisdom to follow those means. Therefore, it is clear that the way of the Salaf is safer, more knowledgeable and wiser. There is no way for this fool to deny this.
Attention to this topic that some of these people that have come after, in their actions, they actually attest to this wording that the later generations are actually more knowledgeable than the earlier generations. And this is very contradictory, because they say that the earlier generations, their stance is most of the times, or in all times, safer and more cautious. While we know caution and safety is built upon knowledge, this type of caution and safety wouldn't come from them unless it was based upon ilm. So they had to be more knowledgeable. And he's going to clarify one by one, clarifying how weak the statement is to say that the latter generations are more knowledgeable and more wise than the earlier ones. And he clarifies once again that this is a statement not intellectually correct, and there's no way of this person getting around these points that he's going to mention. الوجه الثاني أن اعتقاده أن الله ليس له صفة حقيقية دلت عليها هذه النصوص اعتقاد باطل لأنه مبني على شبهات فاسدة ولأن الله تعالى قد ثبتت له صفات الكمال عقلا وفطرة وشرعا فأما دلالة العقل على ثبوت صفات الكمال لله فوجهه أن يقال إن كل موجود في الخارج فلا بد أن يكون له صفة إما صفة كمال وإما صفة نقص والثاني باطل بالنسبة إلى الرب الكامل المستحق للعبادة وبذلك استدل الله تعالى على بطلان ألوهية الأصنام باتصافها بصفات النقص والعجز بكونها لا تسمع ولا تبصر ولا تنفع ولا تضر ولا تخلق ولا تنصر فإذا بطل الثاني تعين الأول وهو ثبوت صفات الكمال لله. تفضل.
Secondly, the aqidah that Allah has no real attributes that are indicated by the texts is a false aqidah because it is based upon corrupted doubts. The attributes of perfection are affirmed for Allah based on the intellect, the senses, the fitrah, and the legislation, the sharia. As for the intellect proving the affirmation of Allah's perfect attributes, everything in existence has attributes and characteristics, either attributes of perfection or attributes of deficiency. The latter is not to be associated with the perfect Lord who deserves all worship. For this reason, Allah has proven the fallacy of the right of idols to be worshipped by describing them with attributes of imperfection and deficiency in that they do not hear, see, benefit, harm, nor create anything, and they cannot grant any victory. Therefore, if the latter is not true, then the first one must be the affirmation of the attributes of perfection to Allah.
So these individuals, where it all started for them to say that Allah does not have attributes. A person may ask, what's the issue? Why do these people cannot affirm that Allah has attributes? It started from Jahm bin Safwan, the one that actually propagated it. when he had a debate with a particular sect that doesn't believe in the existence of God, and he wanted to approve the existence of Allah, wujudullah. So he used some rational arguments. Sometimes you have to be careful, brothers, when you're having debates with atheists and these type of individuals. When sometimes you go into in depth with rational arguments, you can fall into doubts. Sometimes just stick to the shallow end and do not go to in the deep end of debates with these individuals. Keep it very simple. Don't go into their loops and holes, and you find yourself you can't get back out. So one of the doubts that these people had was to say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has no existence. We don't affirm for Allah any existence. So Jahm al-Safwan, he used a rational argument. He says, for anything, for us to our physical entities to be there had to be something that introduced it, and a cause. For us to be physical entities, there had to be a cause and effect that brought us into existence. So he used this argument that a lot of people use nowadays, cause and effect, to show that there is a creator. And when it came to asking about this God that's in existence, does he have any attributes? Does he have any qualities? And what type of qualities are these? This is where he stumbled. He was trying to stick to everything rational, and then he found himself tripping. He was saying that whatever titles that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has, they're not real entities or not real things. For verily, if they are real things, he's going to, the series go on, the cause and effect series. Who introduced that and who brought that into existence? For Allah to have mercy, there had to be something that brought into existence. There had to be a cause and effect. So on and so forth. This rational argument became an endless tug of war. So he tried to close the door by saying, it's not real attributes. They're just titles with no meanings. Allah Sami' bila sam'. Allah is all hearing, but he doesn't hear. Because if we affirm that Allah does hear, the silsila, the series keep going with these people. And that's why you have to try to balance it out. When you're having debates with these individuals, be textual and intellectual at times. Don't always stick to the rational arguments. And don't always listen to these philosophical arguments and just hold on to them like they're wahy min as-sama'. Like the revelation that came from the sky. Yes, sometimes they have some good points, you can use them, but sometimes these people could turn it against you and it becomes towards you. So as a result, from that argument, he went on propagating this belief that Allah doesn't have attributes. And if we affirm for Allah attributes, that we're going to affirm multiple cause and effects that introduce certain things with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then we're going to have to perhaps affirm other things too. So this is where their doubt comes, which is false in totality. It's based upon philosophical concepts that ما أنزل الله بها من سلطان, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not reveal, and actually doesn't make sense. For verily it's contradictive in some of his points. And then from each one, Because people of falsehood, they increase and decrease. There's nothing that keeps them on something. Ahlul Sunnah, they have to stick to something. They can't increase or decrease. People of falsehood, yazidun wa yanqusun. This one comes from the Mu'tazilites, and he starts to decrease and also add on to it. Then we have the Ash'aris. Abu Hasan Ash'ari takes knowledge from the Mu'tazila. The leader, Abu Ali al-Jubai, takes knowledge from him and has multiple rational arguments. Many of their debates was intellectually. What do you say about this? So all of their sources was the aql. So whoever could overcome the other with the aql gets the upper hand. So that's why you find he left that group. Abu Hasan Ash'ari left the Mu'tazila, and he began to form later on what is known as the Ash'ari, even though he left that stage. But just to show that giving precedence to the intellect and making it your source of judgment and your dalil could be reason for this deviation, and why all these people just came from perhaps one source and just multiplied into so many different groups. Because there was nothing that would restrict them. One is the aql, this one has a different understanding, this one has another understanding, and each person goes with his intellect. And in particular, Abu Hasan al-Ash'ari, he, with his first stage where he's with the Mu'tazilites, he's from the prominent students of one of the big heads of the Mu'tazila, Abu Ali al-Jubai, I believe his name is Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab al-Basri. He would teach and educate Abu Hasan al-Ash'ari. And Abu Hasan al-Ash'ari will have a lot of debates with him, arguments. They wouldn't agree on such things. And one time they had a munadara, and a student and teacher, they're having a debate. He asked him about, and this is more like a fictional question, iftiradiyya. This type of thing is not from the way of the Ahlul Sunnah first, to ask questions that are fictional. What if? So he was testing him. Because these people, supposedly, they're the people of intellect. You can throw any question or riddle, and they'll be able to answer. So he told them, what if there's three brothers? Suppose there's a scenario. Three brothers, blood brothers. One is taqi, and one is a disbeliever, in some of the wordings. And the third is a young boy, dies before the age of puberty. So he quickly answers. He says, as for the first one, he's in Jannah. As for the second one, then he's in hellfire. And as for the young boy, then he has salama. He's free from affliction. Huwa fi afiyah. Basically, he's free from affliction. Look how he just answered all that with his intellect, right? So now he's going to question this affair. He says, if this young boy wants to join his older brother in Jannah, could he? He says, no, he can't join his younger brother. He can't join his older brother. It will be said to him, your older brother reached his level of Jannah with his deeds. So Abu Hasan Ash'ari responds, this is logically. He says, what if the young boy objects to Allah and says, where's my shortcomings? Why can I go to Jannah? I'm a young boy, I died before puberty. What's my sin? What prevents me from joining my brother? And he says, you did not give me a long lifespan to live, to do good deeds. And then here Abu Ali al-Jubai responds by saying, no, Allah will say, I knew that if you were to remain longer, have a long lifespan, you would disobey and you would deserve the punishment. So out of looking for your own benefit, I did not make you live long. This whole argument is it's a fictional argument, just rational debate. And Abu al-Hasan Ash'ari says, but what if the older brother responds by saying, oh my Lord, if you knew his condition, and you knew my condition, how would it be if I lived longer? Why did you look into his benefit? And why didn't you look for his benefit? So then he was speechless. Abu Ali Jubai. He couldn't answer. He was overwhelmed. Meaning that these people, they answer questions that are presented to them mainly by their intellect, and then when you throw anything at them, you find that they're confused. Even one time, a person was in a gathering from I think it was Abu Hudayl, one of the leaders of the Mu'tazilites, and he was talking about Ar-Rahman al-Arsh istawa. He was changing, saying we cannot believe in it. So one little boy in the middle, or a young man asked in the gathering, a particular question. He said, Hayyarani al-Hamadani, Hayyarani al-Hamadani. He said, this man confused me. So the slightest thing could confuse these individuals because they have no real foundations to stand on. The intellect is limited, ya akhwa. That's why you find these people that have rational debates online, and any moment they can become speechless. But when it's kitab and sunnah, you know you have a strong foundations. You'll be brought forward anything, and you قُلْ نَقْذِفُ بِالْحَقِّ عَلَى الْبَاطِلِ فَيَدْمَغُهُ فَإِذَا هُوَ زَاهِقٌ. You bring the truth to it, and the falsehood goes.
As for the fitrah proving the affirmation of Allah's perfect attributes, the sound, uncorrupted souls are naturally inclined to the love of Allah, the glorifying of Him, and His worship. So would you love, glorify, and worship anyone other than one you knew to be described with the attributes of perfection?
So these people, what they're trying to say is that the ayat, the sifat, are meaningless. When you read Ar-Rahman al-Arsh istawa, it has no meaning. You're just supposed to read it like a foreigner reads it, who doesn't know the meaning, and just pass on to the next ayah. It's meaningless. They're saying that the Quran is too complicated to understand. They say the Quran is like al-ghaz. It's like riddles. It's too hard to. It's not like وَلَقَدْ يَسَّرْنَا الْقُرْآنَ لِلذِّكْرِ فَهَلْ مِن مُدَّكِرٍ. We have made the Quran easy, so will anyone take heed? No, they're saying the Quran is too complicated. You cannot read the Quran. And they said this, the early generations, because how difficult it was, they would say, whenever we hear ayah, just let it go to the next ayah. Whenever we hear the attributes of Allah, let's move on. This is what they're trying to say. And it's like the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's extremely complicated. It's a book that it's so complicated, if you try to understand it, you become misguided. That's what they're trying to say. That it could be the reason for the people to go astray. La ilaha illallah. Fadal.
As for the legislation, meaning Sharia, proving the affirmation of Allah's perfect attributes, these proofs are too numerous to be counted, such as Allah's statement, He is Allah, other than whom there is no God worthy of worship, knower of the unseen and the seen. He is the merciful, the bestower of mercy. He is Allah, other than whom there is no God worthy of worship, the King, the Holy, the perfect, the reassurer, the overseer, the mighty, the compeller, the superior. Exalted is Allah above whatever they associate with Him. He is Allah, the Creator, the Originator, the Fashioner. To Him belong the best names. Everything in the heavens and earth exalt Him, and He is the Mighty, the Wise. Surah Al-Hashr.
That the natural disposition, the innate nature, inclines to that which is correct, ya akhwa. The fitrah. But when someone becomes polluted and corrupt, this is where they go astray, when they turn away from what is the original path. And just add on to that debate with Abu al-Hasan al-Ash'ari, one of the reasons why he left the Mu'tazila group is because he was able to overcome them or in intellectual debates. Not because he's seen that these people are opposing the Quran and the Sunnah. Like another time he debated with his teacher, Abu Ali al-Jubai, and he says, can we call Allah Aqil, the possessor of intellect? Can we call Allah the possessor of intellect? He said no, because the original word, the root word of Aqil, is taken from something that you tie. So we cannot refer to Allah with that word. Okay, another answer, a logical answer again. And you can't say Qala Allah, Qala Rasul. It's just all intellectual answers. So he said to him, okay, but what about Al-Hakim? You know the word Al-Hakim? Can we call Allah Al-Hakim? He said, yes, there's no problem to call Allah Al-Hakim. He said, but the word Al-Hakim, linguistically, is taken from what you hold the rope of the camel to prevent it from running away. You know the root word of that in Arabic language? Then he was silent, speechless. Fabuhit. When you're always relying on your intellect, it can let you go. The intellect is not the source of judgment and affairs. It's limited. It's the benefits, a tool that you can use, but it shouldn't be your primary source. The primary source should be Kitab or Sunnah. Because it's revelation. You know it will never go wrong. And as a result, Abu al-Hasan al-Ash'ari left them. Because of these debates of overcoming people. And then when he got up on the minbar, he made tawbah. He got up making tawbah. And from what he said is, Inni kuntu aqul bi khalqi al-Qur'an. I used to say that the Qur'an was created. And also, وَأَنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُرَى بِالْأَبْصَارِ, and that Allah will not be seen with the eyesight. وَأَنَّ الشَّرْ فِعْلِي لَيْسَ بِقُدْرَةٍ, and that evil is my action and is not by the qadr of Allah. وَإِنِّي تَائِبٌ, and I am repenting. And then also, here comes some narration, he took off his imamah and he threw it off. He said, I'm freeing myself from that ideology like I'm throwing off my imamah, and he threw it off. But he went from one group to another. That was another deviation, because it wasn't based upon the source of Kitab and Sunnah, it was also based upon intellect. So do not be in this case, ya akhwa. And you find a lot of the people in this regards, even certain madahibs, of the four madhabs, there's scholars within the four madhabs, not the imams, but those who may attribute themselves, who've been afflicted. Shaykh ibn Taymiyyah mentions his book, and in his book, Minhaj al-Sunnah, he said, كذلك أهل المذاهب الأربع وغيرها لا سيما وكثير منهم قد تلبس ببعض المقالات الأصولية وخلط هذا بهذا فالحنبلي والشافعي والمالكي يخلط بمذهب مالك والشافعي وأحمد شيئا من أصول الأشعرية والسالمي وغير ذلك ويضيفه إلى مذهب مالك والشافعي وأحمد وكذلك الحنفي. So he mentions that there's people that are even attributed to the madhabs of the four imams that have been trialed with corrupted aqidah. And they try to ascribe it back to these four imams, but then they're innocent from them. So let us understand, ya ikhwah, that this could affect people. This could affect people, even scholars. So always study these affairs and remember, regarding the names and attributes of Allah, it is tawqifiyya, restricted to a text. They said there's no room for the intellect. When it comes to the names and attributes of Allah, it is tawqifiyya. Or some people, they come online and they say, oh, we can list a number of the Hanbali scholars, the Maliki scholars, who say this about the attributes of Allah. Why do you not do it? And they try to use it against you. So be careful. Hold on.
And his statement, and to him belongs the highest description, attribute in the heavens and earth, Surah Ar-Rum. And his subhanahu wa ta'ala saying, Allah, there is no God worthy of worship but Him, the ever-living, the self-sustainer and sustainer of all that exists. Neither drowsiness nor sleep overtakes Him. To Him belongs whatever is in the heavens and on the earth. Who can intercede with Him except with His permission? He knows what is presently before them and what is after them, and they do not encompass anything of His knowledge except for what He wills. His kursi extends over the heavens and earth, and preserving them does not tire Him, and He is the Most High, the Greatest. Surah Al-Baqarah. And the statement of the Messenger ﷺ, O people, be easy on yourselves, for you are not calling upon one who is deaf or absent. Indeed, you are calling upon one who is hearing, seeing, and near. Indeed, the one you are calling upon is closer to one of you than the neck of his riding animal.
Shaykh Islam ibn Taymiyyah, a person may ask, why even make comparison of the Salaf al-Salih to these deviant groups? And why are we giving comparison of the Salaf al-Salih? Because some people, they mention in the lines of poetry, أَلَمْ تَرَ أَنَّ السَّيْفَ يَنْقُسُ قَدْرُهُ إِذَا قِيلَ إِنَّ السَّيْفَ أَمْضَى مِنَ الْعَصَى. يعني they said, ألم ترى أن السيف ينقص قدره إذا قيل أن السيف ينقص أو أمضى من العصا. They said, isn't it decreases the level of a sword if you say this sword, it is longer than a stick. SubhanAllah, you're making the sword, you lose its value by comparing it to a stick. They said, to compare the Salaf al-Salih to these people, you shouldn't even make the comparison in the first place. But because of how low these people have went, he has to go to their level and just to prove some points. Or else the origin, he wouldn't do this. Comparing the Salaf al-Salih to the individuals? Yeah, so you wouldn't do that. But just to clarify certain points that needs to be clarified, has to be done, ya akhwa. And when he mentions these principles that are so much to be enumerated and to be counted, clarifying that this is proven textually and intellectually. And to believe, for these people to believe in a God that doesn't have attributes, like a person that was a Christian, I was mentioning the brother's story. He was previously a Christian, he used to believe in God that has attributes. He accepted Islam, he joined this, he took a shahada from a group that has some issues with the names and attributes of Allah. And they told him, brother, Allah doesn't have this attribute, Allah doesn't have this attribute, Allah doesn't have this attribute. He says, SubhanAllah, I was in a better condition prior to when I was, and regarding believing that God has an attribute. And you guys are telling me. So the scholars, they brought this point. They said, SubhanAllah, this person, he ended up leaving this group, and he came to a rightly guided the sect of Islam. But just to show that even people that are of other religions, they know that God has qualities and attributes. That's why some scholars say the impact that some of these deviant groups have could be even more of an impact than some of the disbelieving groups. Some of the disbelieving groups, like meaning the harm that they can spread of shubuhat and doubts. He says, have knowledge of certainty that the word salaf, the predecessors, it means the salaf of who proceeded in time, and also the salaf who are upright in aqeedah. So both. And they said also you can say, like for people that are alive now, that they're from the salaf. He says from the angle that they are upon the belief of the aqeedah of the salaf, salafiyah. So if they're on the belief of the aqeedah of the salafiyah, you can call them salaf. Like they say, we can say about Shaykh bin Baz, he's from the salaf. We can say about Albani, he's from the salaf. From the angle that they're upon the aqeedah of madhab al-salaf, the methodology of the salaf. But as for if we're referring to zamanan in the time frame, or the real meaning of time of those who preceded, then it's referring to the three generations, al-qurun al-thalatha al-mufaddala, the three best generations, and their imams. So it's very important that you understand this, because anyone that is on the belief of the methodology of the salaf, meaning their aqeedah, you can refer to them as salaf, but in all cases, we must understand that when it's either utliq as-salaf, when it's generally expressed, it means the early generations. And when these people say that the early generations, they just used to believe in the wordings without affirming its meanings, this is a lie, as Shaykh Ibn Taymiyyah mentions. But who these people are referring to, they're referring to individuals that may have had the belief that we consign the meaning of the attributes, and we refer them back to Allah, we don't believe them. We don't believe in them. And this may have occurred as an error to some, but is not the actual belief of the Sahabas or the Tabi'een. Maybe a particular person that had, from some of the madahibs, that had an error in this affair. And they try to use it against you as a debate. This particular imam said this, or this particular scholar from this Hanbali madhab said this. So if he fell into error in this regard, it's not a proof. And firstly, it's been disputed if he actually believes in this. And even him, what he meant was if there's any confusion, then refer the meaning back to Allah and don't try to say something that you don't have no knowledge of. So he wasn't trying to say it like them. It was slightly different. These people say you don't believe in attributes of Allah in the first place. As for these individuals, they're saying that if there's any attribute that causes some confusion for the people, and you're going to see it may lead to something, then just refer back to Allah and say, Allahu A'lam. And even that's wrong, but this is what they intended, and it was different from what these deviant groups intended. Al-Wajh al-Rabi', tafadhal.
Fourthly, the Salaf are the inheritors of the prophets and messengers. They learned their knowledge directly from the spring of divine messengership and the actualities of Iman. As for those Khalaf, they have learned what is with them from the Majus, fire worshippers, the Mushrikun, and the misguided ones from the Jews and Greeks. So how are the inheritors of the Majus, Mushrikun, the Jews and Greeks, and those who have germinated from them more knowledgeable and wiser regarding the names and attributes of Allah than the inheritors of the prophets and messengers?
And this is the sad start. This is to say people that took their knowledge from individuals that were Zoroastrians, pagans. Some of these Greek philosophers that they took from, they're not even Muslims. You look from what does this guy believe in? This guy's a Christian. He says, SubhanAllah, this guy is the person that we're going to say who took knowledge from this person is better than the one who took knowledge from Abu Bakr, Umar. How could you compare the two? The Salaf are warathatul anbiya, the inheritors of the prophets and messengers. These people are the inheritors of who? Inheritors of the words or in affairs of learning. You can see this. The fifth one, al-wajh al-khamis.
Fifthly, those of the Khalaf whom this stupid one, the one who says this statement, prefers their way in knowledge and wisdom over the way of the Salaf, were confused because of their abandoning what Allah has sent Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam with of clear teachings and guidance. They, the Khalaf, have sought their knowledge of knowing Allah from those who don't even know Him themselves based upon what they have put forth themselves as well as what the Ummah have witnessed against them. Al-Razi, one of their leaders, said, clarifying what all their knowledge finally leads to, the end result of giving precedence to the intellect is simply constraint, and most of the effort of the workers is nothing but misguidance. The souls within our bodies are in emptiness, and most of our dunya is nothing but harming and worry. We have not benefited from our lifelong research other than we gathered together statements of meaningless talk.
This is one of their great leaders attesting to this. وَشَهِدَ شَاهِدٌ مِّنْ أَهْلِهَا. Someone from their own came out and spilled the words. He's telling the people, do not busy yourself with this rhetoric, this type of speech that is not based upon Kitab and Sunnah. I've done it for years and I came out confused. He's telling us as it is. He says, نِهَايَةُ إِقْدَامِ الْعُقُولِ عِقَالُ وَأَكْثَرُ سَعْيُ الْعَالَمِينَ ضَلَالُ وأرواحنا في وحشة من جسومنا وغاية دنيانا أذى ووبال ولم نستفد من بحثنا طول عمرنا سوى أن جمعنا فيه قيل وقالوا. He said as it is. He said, I did not come out of all of our research, theologian of so-and-so. He has this title. It came out all of it with just قيل وقال. Useless talk. Plato said, so-and-so said, this person said, the concept of the mind, it could only grasp this, and they try to apply it to the names and attributes of Allah. And they came out confused. This is the sad situation, Ikhwah. And most of these people, they said they're all over the place. And not only physically, but in their madhabs. They're in different madhabs. They said like Ghazali, sharraq wa gharrab. He was all over the place with his madhab. One time he's a Sufi, one time he's this, one time he's this. He was all over the place. Because this is what it was the reason, ya akhwa. When you don't make your standard, your criteria in the Kitab and the Sunnah, you find yourself in this confusion. And these are true words. Sometimes Shaykh ibn Taymiyyah, he'll bring out words of their leaders or the people who they look up to just to prove a point. And this is a good technique and argument. At times, quote people of their own just to convince them. Tafadhal.
I have pondered over the ways of the rhetorical speakers and the methodologies of the philosophers in what I thought would heal the sickness, yet did not even quench the thirst. I have discovered that the closest of paths is the way of the Quran. Read about the ithbat, affirmation of the attributes. Ar-Rahmanu ala al-Arsh istawa. The most merciful rose over the throne. And his saying, إِلَيْهِ يَصْعَدُ الْكَلِمُ الطَّيِّبُ وَالْعَمَلُ الصَّالِحُ يَرْفَعُهُ. To him ascends good speech and righteous work raises it. And read about the nafi, لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٍ. There is nothing like him. And his saying, وَلَا يُحِيطُونَ بِهِ عِلْمًا. And they will never encompass what he knows. And whoever experiences what I did will learn what I learned.
MashaAllah, beautiful words. Imam Al-Razi, and this is authentic to him. If they ever try to deny that he didn't say, where's the source? You can bring the source. So this is the source. One of your own that you always quote said this. We can even bring you more. We can bring you statements of Ghazali. We can bring you different scholars. Shahrastani. We can give you different Ash'ari, big figures. They came out, they said, we came out confused. Came out confused. All we had to do is just say, Ar-Rahmanu ala al-Arsh istawa. Just stick to the text. Keep it simple. Do not to be so creative in these various of sciences. And then also, they're so amused to learn ilm al-jadal, how to debate, the art of debate. They're very in tune in debating. Debating, yes, is a tool of knowledge. You can learn from it. But these people will make most of the gatherings of debates intellectual debates. Who could overcome the other one with rational arguments? And then they'll make the policy of the debate. If I overcome you, you follow me. And if you overcome me, I follow you. Well, that's their madhab. It's not kitab and sunnah. What decides the matter? And they even, like when you read the books of debate, they even have like certain methods that they'll do to even add to winning a debate. Like some of them will add smiling while you're facing your opponent in debate, you can win. So on and so forth. They'll add certain things. The concept is just to win. I defeated so-and-so in a debate, okay, you have to join me now. This is what happens. Anything left? Hold on.
So would the way of these confused people, who have even confessed against themselves of their misguidance and confusion, be more knowledgeable and wiser than the way of the Salaf, who are the flag bearers of guidance and the lamps within darkness? Allah bestowed upon them of knowledge and wisdom that surpassed even other followers of the prophets. They comprehended the actualities of Iman and knowledge, and all of that which others gathered would not even make them similar to those, meaning the Salaf. So how would one conclude that these, the others among the Khalaf, are superior to them? With this, it is clear that the way of the Salaf is safer, more knowledgeable, and wiser.
MashaAllah. If you find some of these individuals, how they raise certain characters and figures. Al-Juwayni, Imam Al-Juwayni, Fulan, so-and-so. And they're so amused of his works. And then when you give him like a great Imam from the Tabi'een, Sufyan al-Thawri, so-and-so, he doesn't really hold it with high regards. Because they really they admire these individuals that were supposedly so intellectual. Yes, some of these people, mashallah, they had some capabilities and talents, but never give them precedence over the early generations. Khairun nas qarni. The Prophet ﷺ said as it is, the best of the people is my generation, thumma alladhina yalunahum, thumma alladhina yalunahum. You can't go wrong with that. He says the best of people. And you say, no, some of these people who come after, they're better. And some of them, I think it, Shahrastani, when he was mentioning how rhetoric and the science of this, the mind of theology, just using the concept of logic and deciding, how it confused him. Or he says, لَقَدْ طُفْتُ الْمَعَاهِدَ كُلَّهَا. He said, I went through various institutes of knowledge, different institutions. And he said, I came out that I seen a person just واضعا كف نادمي, placing his hand out of regret. Person just, this is Shahrastani, of someone who's big in their eyes, and he's mentioning it as it is. I'll read you commentary about if we have the time, inshallah. I don't know if the time permits. So the initial statement of Shahrastani, he says, لَعَمْرِي لَقَدْ تُفْتُ الْمَعَاهِدَ كُلَّهَا وَسَيَّرْتُ طَرْفِي بَيْنَ تِلْكَ الْمَعَالِمِ فَلَمْ أَرَى إِلَّا وَاضِعًا كَفَّ حَائِرٍ على ذقن أو قارعا سن نادمي. So, as I mentioned, he said that he went through various institutions, but it was an institution of rhetoric and logic. He didn't go through the correct one, Kitab al-Sunnah. And he said, I seen everyone that came out of it just in a state of confusion, placing his hand on his face, just confused, or biting his fingers after regret. So one of the San'ani said to him, لَعَلَّكَ أَهْمَلْتَ الطَّوَافَ بِمَعْهِدِي. He said, لَعَلَّكَ أَهْمَلْتَ الطَّوَافَ بِمَعْهِدِي الرَّسُولِ وَمَنْ لَاقَاهُ مِنْ كُلِّ عَالِمِ. He said, perhaps you missed out to go to the correct ma'had. All this time you're bouncing from one ma'had to another ma'had. You missed out from the real ma'had, ma'had al-Rasul and the Ahl al-Hadith. And he said, فَمَا حَارَ مَنْ يَهْدِي بِهَدِي مُحَمَّدٍ وَلَسْتَ تَرَاهُ قَارِعًا سِنَّ نَادِمٍ. He said, you won't find a man who takes the correct ma'had, the institution or learning of Ahl al-Hadith, to come out confused or bite on his fingers out of regret. So this is what we end with, ya akhwa. Let's just adhere to the text and the way of the early ones. سبحانك اللهم بحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت ونستغفرك ونتوب إليك. بارك الله فيكم.